Farmer kicks stray cat off his land, then regrets it when he discovers the truth. The rusty hinges of the barn door creaked open, casting a sliver of morning light onto the dusty hay-strewn floor. A scrawny, ginger cat, with fur matted and eyes wide with apprehension, slunk through the opening. This was Tom-Tom, a stray who had wandered miles, driven by hunger and the instinct to survive. The barn was a cacophony of sounds, the gentle bleating of sheep, the rustling of straw, the distant clucking of hens. It was overwhelming for Tom-Tom, who had spent his days navigating the alleyways and shadows of the town, scavenging for scraps and avoiding the occasional hostile dog. He pressed himself against the wall, his heart pounding in his chest. Every unfamiliar noise sent a jolt of fear through him. He had never been this close to farm animals before. The sheep, with their thick woolly coats and vacant stares, seemed like creatures from another world. Tom-Tom crept further into the barn, his belly growling with hunger. He spotted a half-eaten bowl of cat food near a stack of hay bales. It must have been left out for the farm cat, a sleek black feline he had glimpsed earlier, sunning itself on the porch. Hesitantly, he approached the bowl, his senses on high alert. He took a tentative bite, then another, savoring the taste of real food. As he ate, he couldn't help but steal glances at the sheep. They seemed docile enough, their attention focused on munching hay and nudging each other playfully. One lamb, smaller than the others, with a patch of white fur on its head, wandered away from the flock. It approached Tom-Tom with a curious gaze, its big brown eyes fixed on the ginger cat. Tom-Tom froze, unsure how to react. He had never been this close to a lamb before. The lamb bleated softly, then nudged Tom-Tom's leg with its head. Tom-Tom flinched, but the lamb persisted, nudging him again and again. A strange sensation washed over Tom-Tom, a feeling he hadn't experienced before. It wasn't fear, but something akin to curiosity, maybe even affection. He tentatively reached out a paw and touched the lamb's soft wool. The lamb responded by licking his hand. Tom-Tom recoiled at first, but the lamb's insistent licking soon turned into a gentle grooming session. As the sun streamed through the barn windows, casting long shadows on the floor, Tom-Tom found himself relaxing. The fear that had gripped him was slowly receding, replaced by a cautious curiosity. He watched the lamb frolic around him, its playful bleating a soothing sound. He was still an outsider, a stray in a foreign land. But in that shared moment, in the warmth of the barn and the gentle company of the lamb, Tom-Tom felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this farm, this unexpected sanctuary, could become his new home. The days that followed were a blend of apprehension and growing wonder for Tom-Tom. He spent most of his time observing the sheep, their movements, their interactions, their strange bleating language. He was fascinated by their size and their gentle nature. They seemed so different from the skittish pigeons and wary squirrels he was used to encountering. He would watch them graze in the fields, their woolly bodies swaying in unison as they moved across the green pastures. Sometimes he would follow them at a distance, his curiosity outweighing his fear. He was particularly intrigued by the lambs, their playful antics and boundless energy. One afternoon, as the sun beat down on the farm, Tom-Tom found himself drawn to the shade of a large oak tree where the sheep were resting. He cautiously approached the group, his body low to the ground, his tail twitching nervously. A group of lambs, their curiosity piqued by the ginger cat, broke away from the flock and surrounded him. They nudged him with their heads, their soft wool brushing against his fur. Tom-Tom, initially startled, soon found himself enjoying the attention. He started playing with the lambs, chasing them around the tree and batting at their noses with his paws. The lambs, in turn, seemed to delight in his company, their playful bleating filling the air. As the days turned into weeks, Tom-Tom's confidence grew. He no longer hid in the shadows, but instead moved freely around the farm, exploring the barns, the fields, and the surrounding woods. He was becoming a part of the farm, a silent observer of its daily rhythms. One day, he discovered a new source of fascination, the hay feeders. He would watch the sheep jostle for position, their heads buried deep in the troughs. He was intrigued by the way they pulled the hay out, their mouths working rhythmically. One day, overcome by curiosity, he decided to try it himself. He leaped onto the edge of the feeder and peered inside. The sweet smell of hay filled his nostrils. He tentatively reached in and pulled out a mouthful. It was surprisingly tasty. From that day on, Tom became a regular visitor to the hay feeders. He would often join the sheep, squeezing in between them and munching on the hay. The sheep didn't seem to mind his presence. In fact, they seemed to welcome it. One sunny afternoon, as the sheep were basking in the warmth of the sun, Tom decided to join them. He curled up beside a large ewe, his body pressed against her warm wool. The ewe didn't move, seemingly content with his presence. Tom closed his eyes and let the sun wash over him. He felt a sense of peace and belonging he had never experienced before. He was no longer a stray, a lonely wanderer. He was Tom, the farm cat, and these sheep, these gentle creatures, were his new companions. Life with the sheep was idyllic, but Tom was a cat with an insatiable curiosity and a growing sense of responsibility towards his woolly friends. He would often observe the farm dog, a border collie named Rusty, herding the sheep, his lithe body weaving through the flock, his sharp barks guiding them in the right direction. Tom was mesmerized. He would watch Rusty for hours, his mind trying to decipher the intricate dance between the dog and the sheep. He felt a stirring within him, a desire to emulate Rusty, to become a shepherd himself. One day, as Rusty was taking a break, Tom saw his chance. He crept towards the flock, his body low to the ground, his tail twitching with excitement. He let out a tentative meow, hoping to get the sheep's attention. The sheep, however, were more interested in grazing and paid him no heed. Undeterred, Tom tried a different tactic. He darted back and forth in front of the flock, trying to mimic Rusty's movements. The sheep, startled by his sudden appearance, started to move. Tom, emboldened by his success, continued his efforts, weaving in and out of the flock, meowing and hissing in an attempt to guide them. His efforts, however, were met with mixed results. The sheep, confused by his erratic movements, started to scatter in different directions. Tom, realizing he had lost control, tried to round them up, but his efforts only served to further disperse the flock. Just as the situation was about to descend into chaos, Rusty appeared, his bark ringing out across the field. The sheep, recognizing their true shepherd, immediately calmed down and formed a neat line. Rusty gave Tom a stern look, his message clear. "This is my job, cat. Leave the herding to the professionals." Tom, feeling chastised, slunk away, his tail between his legs. The farmer, who had witnessed the whole incident, chuckled to himself. He had grown fond of the ginger cat, who had become a fixture on the farm. He admired Tom's enthusiasm, but he knew the cat needed some guidance. From that day on, the farmer started to include Tom in his daily routines. He would take the cat with him when he checked on the sheep, explaining the nuances of herding, the importance of patience and timing. Tom, a keen observer, absorbed the farmer's lessons. He started to understand the subtle cues, the body language of the sheep, the way Rusty used his eyes and barks to guide the flock. He practiced his herding skills whenever he got the chance, using a small group of lambs as his trainees. He was still far from being a professional, but he was improving with every passing day. The farmer, noticing Tom's progress, decided to give him a chance to prove himself. He assigned Tom a small flock of sheep to watch over, under the watchful eye of Rusty. Tom took his task seriously. He patrolled the perimeter of the flock, his eyes scanning for any signs of danger. He kept the sheep together, gently nudging any strays back into the fold. By the end of the day, Tom had successfully completed his first solo herding mission. He had proven himself to be a capable shepherd, albeit a rather unconventional one. The farmer, impressed by Tom's dedication, gave him a pat on the head and a special treat. Tom-Tom, basking in the praise, felt a surge of pride. He had come a long way from the scared stray who had wandered onto the farm. He was now a valuable member of the team, a shepherd in his own right. Tom-Tom's role on the farm evolved beyond playful companionship and amateur herding. He discovered a new purpose, a calling that resonated with his innate feline instincts. He became the guardian of the flock. It started with small things. A rustle in the bushes at the edge of the pasture would send him darting towards the sound. His fur bristling, a low growl rumbling in his chest. He would chase away curious squirrels, chase off intruding rabbits, and stand his ground against the occasional stray dog that ventured too close to the sheep. The sheep, initially startled by his sudden bursts of activity, soon learned to trust his instincts. They would watch him with curious eyes as he patrolled the perimeter of the flock, his movements fluid and alert. They sensed his vigilance, his unwavering dedication to their safety. One night, a storm raged across the farm, the wind howling like a banshee, the rain lashing down in torrents. The sheep huddled together in the barn, their eyes wide with fear. Tom-Tom, sensing their anxiety, moved amongst them, rubbing against their legs, purring softly. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the barn. A large branch, torn from the old oak tree, had smashed through the roof, creating a gaping hole. The sheep panicked, their bleating filling the air. Tom-Tom, however, remained calm. He knew he had to act fast. He leaped onto a hay bale, his eyes scanning the barn for any signs of danger. He spotted a small lamb, separated from the flock, cowering in a corner. He jumped down and made his way towards the lamb, dodging fallen debris and puddles of water. He reached the lamb and nudged it gently, urging it to follow him. The lamb, reassured by his presence, hesitantly followed him back to the safety of the flock. The storm raged on, but Tom-Tom remained vigilant, his eyes constantly scanning the barn for any new threats. He kept the sheep calm, his presence a reassuring beacon in the midst of the chaos. When the storm finally subsided, the farmer rushed to the barn, his heart pounding with worry. He was relieved to find the sheep safe and sound, Tom-Tom curled up amongst them, his fur damp but his spirit undeterred. The farmer knelt down and stroked Tom-Tom's head, his voice filled with gratitude. "You saved them, Tom-Tom," he said. "You saved them all." Tom-Tom purred in response, his heart swelling with pride. He had faced the storm, protected the flock, and proven himself to be more than just a farm cat. He was their guardian, their protector, a furry knight in shining armor. From that day on, Tom-Tom's reputation as the guardian of the flock grew. The sheep looked to him for reassurance, for protection, for leadership. He was their trusted companion, their fearless defender, a cat who had found his true calling amongst the woolly masses. As Tom-Tom grew into his role as guardian and occasional herder, he developed a unique bond with the ewes, the mother sheep of the flock. He understood their anxieties, their tireless devotion to their lambs, and the constant vigilance required to keep their offspring safe. He would often sit with the ewes while they nursed their lambs, his presence a calming influence. He would groom them, gently licking their wool, a gesture that seemed to soothe their maternal worries. The ewes, in turn, seemed to appreciate his company. They would allow him to curl up beside them, sharing their warmth and offering him a sense of belonging. They trusted him with their lambs, knowing he would keep a watchful eye on them. Tom-Tom's presence gave the ewes a much-needed respite. They could graze peacefully, knowing their lambs were under his watchful care. They could even take short naps, confident that Tom-Tom would alert them to any signs of danger. One ewe, in particular, named Daisy, formed a particularly close bond with Tom-Tom. Daisy was a gentle soul, a first-time mother who was constantly worried about her lamb, a mischievous little fellow named Pip. Pip was a bundle of energy, always exploring, always getting into scrapes. Daisy was constantly on edge, her eyes following Pip's every move. Tom-Tom, sensing her anxiety, took it upon himself to keep an eye on Pip. He would follow Pip on his adventures, making sure he didn't stray too far from the flock. He would gently steer him away from dangerous areas, like the steep banks of the creek or the thorny blackberry bushes. One day, Pip wandered off into the woods, lured by the enticing sounds of birdsong. Daisy, frantic with worry, bleated for him to return, but Pip was too far away to hear her. Tom, seeing Daisy's distress, sprang into action. He followed Pip's scent trail into the woods, his senses alert. He found Pip trapped in a thicket of brambles, his cries muffled by the dense foliage. Tom carefully navigated the thorns and reached Pip. He nudged the lamb gently, reassuring him that help was at hand. Then he started to pull at the brambles, carefully disentangling Pip from the thorny trap. Once Pip was free, Tom led him back to the pasture, where Daisy was waiting, her eyes filled with relief. She nuzzled Pip, her bleating filled with gratitude for Tom's heroic rescue. From that day on, Daisy's trust in Tom was absolute. She would often leave Pip in his care, knowing he would keep her lamb safe. Tom, in turn, cherished his role as Pip's protector, his bond with the mischievous lamb growing stronger with each passing day. The other ewes, witnessing Tom's dedication to Daisy and Pip, also began to rely on him more and more. They knew they could count on him to watch over their lambs, to protect them from harm, to be their constant companion and guardian. Tom, the once stray cat, had become an integral part of the flock, a furry shepherd, a trusted friend, and a beloved member of the farm family. Life on the farm was a constant cycle of change, a rhythm dictated by the turning seasons. Tom, now fully integrated into the farm's routine, experienced these shifts with a growing sense of wonder. Spring brought new life to the farm. The fields, once barren and brown, were now carpeted in a vibrant green. Lambs, wobbly and playful, filled the pastures with their joyful bleating. The air was alive with the buzzing of bees and the singing of birds. Tom reveled in the warmth of the sun, basking in its golden rays as he watched the lambs frolic. He joined them in their games, chasing butterflies, pouncing on unsuspecting grasshoppers, and rolling in the fragrant clover. He helped the ewes keep track of their ever-energetic offspring, his keen eyes spotting any lambs that strayed too far from the flock. He would gently guide them back, his presence a reassuring constant in their young lives. Summer brought long, lazy days, filled with the drone of cicadas and the sweet scent of hay. The sheep grazed contentedly in the fields, their wool thick and heavy in the heat. Tom would often find a shady spot under a tree, joining the sheep in their midday siesta. He would accompany the farmer on his rounds, checking the fences, inspecting the water troughs, and keeping a watchful eye on the flock. He was the farmer's trusted companion, his presence a comforting reminder of the bond they shared. Autumn painted the leaves in hues of gold and crimson, the air crisp and cool. The days grew shorter, the nights longer. The sheep, their wool now thick and ready for the coming winter, gathered closer together, seeking warmth and comfort. Tom would curl up amongst them, his purring a soothing lullaby. He would help the farmer gather the sheep for their evening feed, his presence calming their anxieties as they moved towards the barn. Winter brought a blanket of white to the farm, the fields transformed into a pristine landscape. The sheep huddled together in the barn, seeking shelter from the biting wind and the icy snowflakes. Tom would stay with them, his warmth a welcome addition to their huddled bodies. He would play with the lambs, keeping their spirits high during the long, dark days. He would even venture out into the snow, his tracks leaving a delicate pattern on the pristine surface. He would help the farmer clear the paths, his keen senses guiding him through the drifts. He would check on the sheep, ensuring they had enough food and water, his presence a beacon of hope in the midst of the winter's chill. Through the changing seasons, Tom remained a constant presence on the farm, a loyal companion, a trusted guardian, and a beloved member of the family. He had found his place in the world, his purpose, his home. The rhythm of life on the farm, though comforting in its predictability, was not without its challenges. One crisp autumn morning, a sense of unease settled over the flock. The usually boisterous lambs were subdued, their bleating lacking its usual playful energy. The ewes, their maternal instincts heightened, huddled their offspring close, their eyes filled with worry. Tom-Tom, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, became more alert. He patrolled the perimeter of the flock with increased vigilance, his senses heightened, his every instinct telling him something was amiss. The farmer, too, noticed the change in the sheep's demeanor. He moved among them, checking for signs of illness, his brow furrowed with concern. He noticed a few of the lambs were listless, their noses dry, their coats lacking their usual sheen. Fear gripped his heart. Could it be blue tongue? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Blue tongue, a devastating disease carried by midges, could decimate a flock in a matter of days. He immediately isolated the affected lambs, his heart heavy with dread. He contacted the veterinarian, his voice trembling as he explained the symptoms. The wait for the vet felt like an eternity, each passing minute filled with anxiety. Tom-Tom, sensing the farmer's distress, stayed by his side, his presence a silent offering of comfort. He watched as the farmer paced restlessly, his face etched with worry. When the vet finally arrived, the atmosphere on the farm was thick with tension. The vet examined the lambs, his face grim. He confirmed the farmer's worst fears. It was indeed blue tongue. A wave of despair washed over the farmer. He had worked tirelessly to build his flock, to care for his sheep, to nurture them through good times and bad. Now, he faced the possibility of losing them to this cruel disease. Tom-Tom watched the vet administer medication to the sick lambs, his heart aching for their suffering. He stayed with them throughout the night, his purring a soothing balm for their fevered bodies. The following days were filled with uncertainty. The farmer, his face etched with exhaustion, worked tirelessly to care for the sick lambs, following the vet's instructions meticulously. Tom-Tom remained a constant presence, offering comfort and support to both the farmer and the sheep. He would sit with the sick lambs, grooming them, keeping them warm, his presence a source of comfort in their time of need. He would also keep a watchful eye on the rest of the flock, ensuring they remained healthy and safe. Slowly, with the vet's care and the farmer's dedication, the sick lambs began to recover. Their appetites returned, their energy levels increased, and their bleating regained its playful tone. A sense of relief washed over the farm. The threat of blue tongue had been contained. The flock had survived. The farmer, his face etched with gratitude, hugged Tom-Tom tightly, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Tom-Tom," he whispered. "You were there for them, for me, when we needed you most." Tom-Tom purred in response, his heart filled with joy. He had faced this challenge alongside his human and sheep family, proving once again that their bond was stronger than any adversity. The farm, having weathered the storm of the blue tongue scare, settled back into a comfortable routine. Yet, change was once again on the horizon. The farmer, recognizing the need for additional help with the growing flock, decided to get a sheepdog. The arrival of Bess, a young and energetic border collie, brought a wave of excitement and apprehension to the farm. The sheep, accustomed to Rusty's calm and experienced presence, were wary of this new, boisterous canine. Tom-Tom, too, observed Bess with a mix of curiosity and caution. He watched as she bounded across the fields, her tail wagging furiously, her barks echoing through the air. He sensed her eagerness, her enthusiasm for herding, but he also recognized a hint of overzealousness in her approach. Bess, eager to prove her worth, would often overexert herself, her herding attempts sometimes causing more chaos than order. The sheep, confused by her frantic movements, would scatter in different directions, their bleating filled with anxiety. Tom-Tom, with his years of experience observing Rusty and learning the nuances of sheep behavior, recognized Bess's missteps. He would subtly intervene, positioning himself between Bess and the sheep, his calm presence helping to soothe their anxieties. He would also observe Bess's herding techniques, offering silent guidance through his own movements. He would demonstrate the importance of patience, the subtle cues that guided the sheep, the calm assertiveness that instilled confidence in the flock. Bess, initially resistant to the cat's interference, gradually began to recognize the wisdom in his actions. She started to observe him, to mimic his movements, to learn from his experience. Their relationship evolved from one of rivalry to one of mutual respect and cooperation. They would work together, their strengths complementing each other. Bess's energy and enthusiasm combined with Tom-Tom's calm wisdom and understanding of the sheep created a harmonious herding duo. The sheep, sensing the shift in dynamics, grew more comfortable with Bess's presence. They learned to trust her guidance, her barks no longer a source of anxiety but a reassuring signal. Tom-Tom, witnessing the positive changes in Bess, felt a sense of satisfaction. He had helped to mold a novice sheepdog into a capable herder, ensuring the continued well-being of the flock. The farmer, observing the harmonious partnership between the cat and the dog, smiled with contentment. He had created a team, a family of sorts, where each member played a vital role in the farm's success. Tom-Tom, the once stray cat, had become a mentor, a teacher, a guiding force in the ever-evolving life of the farm. He had embraced change, adapted to new challenges, and continued to prove his invaluable worth to his human and sheep family. Tom-Tom's influence on the farm extended beyond his role as guardian and herding assistant. He had, in his own unique way, changed the very culture of the farm, leaving a lasting legacy that would be felt for years to come. His presence had fostered a deeper understanding and appreciation for the sheep. The farmer, observing Tom-Tom's interactions with the flock, began to see them not just as livestock, but as individuals with distinct personalities and needs. He started to pay closer attention to their behavior, recognizing their subtle cues, their anxieties, their joys. He implemented changes in their care, ensuring they had more space to roam, more opportunities for social interaction, and a greater sense of well-being. The farmhands, too, were influenced by Tom-Tom's example. They started to treat the sheep with more gentleness and respect, recognizing their sentience and their capacity for emotional connection. The farm, once a place of purely practical concerns, became a place where compassion and understanding flourished. The sheep, no longer just a source of wool and meat, were now valued members of the farm community. Tom-Tom's legacy extended beyond the human inhabitants of the farm. The sheep themselves had learned from him. They had learned to trust, to rely on each other, to find comfort in companionship. The lambs, growing up under Tom-Tom's watchful eye, developed a sense of confidence and resilience. They were less prone to panic, more adaptable to change, and more attuned to their surroundings. The ewes, having experienced Tom-Tom's unwavering support, became more relaxed and confident mothers. They knew they could rely on him to help them raise their lambs, to protect them from harm, to guide them through the challenges of life on the farm. Even Rusty, the veteran sheepdog, had learned from Tom-Tom. He had observed the cat's calm assertiveness, his ability to guide the sheep without force or intimidation. He had incorporated these techniques into his own herding style, becoming a more patient and effective shepherd. Tom-Tom, the once stray cat, had become a catalyst for change, a beacon of compassion, a symbol of the interconnectedness of all living beings. His legacy was woven into the very fabric of the farm, a testament to the power of friendship, understanding, and unwavering love. Time, the relentless tide, continued its ceaseless flow, leaving its mark on all that it touched. Tom-Tom, once a sprightly young cat, now carried the weight of years upon his shoulders. His once vibrant ginger fur was streaked with white, his movements a touch slower, his naps a little longer. But his spirit, his essence, remained unchanged. His eyes, though clouded with age, still held the same spark of intelligence, the same unwavering devotion to his sheep family. He no longer patrolled the fields with the same youthful vigor, but his presence remained a comforting constant. He would sit atop a hay bale, his gaze sweeping across the flock, ensuring their safety. His purrs a soothing melody in the barn's quiet hum. The sheep too had aged. Daisy, his closest confidant, now moved with a slower gait, her wool no longer as thick and lustrous. Pip, once a mischievous lamb, was now a mature ram, his playful antics replaced with a calm demeanor. But their bond with Tom-Tom remained as strong as ever. They would often gather around him, their bodies pressing against his, seeking the warmth of his presence, the comfort of his familiar scent. The lambs, born long after Tom-Tom's arrival, knew him as a legend, a wise elder, a protector of the flock. They would approach him with reverence, their eyes wide with admiration, their bleating soft and gentle. Tom-Tom would watch them play, a wistful smile gracing his whiskered face. He saw in them the echoes of his own youth, the boundless energy, the unbridled joy of life on the farm. He had witnessed generations of sheep come and go, each leaving their own unique imprint on his heart. He had seen lambs born, watched them grow, and mourned their passing. He had experienced the full cycle of life, the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and losses, and through it all, he had remained a constant, a steady presence, a source of comfort and love. He had become an integral part of the farm's history, his story interwoven with the lives of the sheep, the farmer, and all who had crossed his path. One warm spring afternoon, as the sun bathed the farm in its golden glow, Tom-Tom curled up amongst the sheep, his body nestled against Daisy's warm wool. He closed his eyes, his breathing slow and steady, his purrs a soft lullaby. The sheep gathered around him, their bodies forming a protective circle, their warmth enveloping him in a cocoon of love. The farmer, his eyes filled with tears, knelt beside Tom-Tom, his hand gently stroking the cat's fur. "Thank you, Tom-Tom," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything." Tom-Tom opened his eyes, his gaze meeting the farmer's. A soft purr rumbled in his chest, a final expression of love and gratitude. Then, with a peaceful sigh, he closed his eyes once more, his spirit slipping away, carried on the gentle breeze that swept across the farm. The sheep remained by his side, their bleating a mournful chorus, their tears mingling with the farmer's. They had lost their guardian, their friend, their beloved companion. But Tom-Tom's legacy lived on, etched in their hearts, woven into the very fabric of the farm. He had taught them the meaning of friendship, the power of love, the beauty of life's simple pleasures. And as the sun set on the farm, casting long shadows across the fields, a sense of peace settled over the land. Tom-Tom, the whisker wrangler, the guardian of the flock, the beloved friend, had found his final resting place, his spirit forever entwined with the farm he had called home.